I think so.
We're live. There we go.
I think,
Where's your camera? Oh, just on the.
yes. All right. I think we are live, I believe. If anyone is in the chat and has joined, please let us know. Anyone who's on the channel should probably have noticed that there's a new live now. Let's hope. Yep. All right. I see. Yes. Hello, I am here. And sound is good. Can you let us know if sound is good? We've got me on a little.
And this is Mike B.
Hi, Jeff.
Oh, hey, Jeff. Thanks for coming.
Great. Sound is good. Now, as it stands, it looks like it is mirrored. So we are going to have to be referring to right and left, and it's going to be opposite for folks who are watching. Sorry about that. I don't know if I have a way of changing that. But we are live. We are here at Buttonwoods Museum in Haverhill, Massachusetts. We have been working for the past how many days is it now?
Today's 4.
Today's day 4. This is Stitching History Together. We are working to reconstruct a gown from the 1770s, and we're basing it on a gown that purportedly belonged to Abigail Adams. So we've got several of our stitchers here. We have Naomi Ryan, we have Naomi Glazer, we have myself, Sarah Walsh, we have Lisa Neal, and over at the work table at the moment is Kate, and it's a little bit blown out because of the light there, but there's Kate. There's Kate. So today we are kind of putting everything together. We've been working on individual pieces and parts of the gown, and this is the full back piece of the bodice with the back pleats already stitched down. This is the skirt side panel. And right now, so Naomi Glazer is working on attaching the side pieces of the bodice to the back. And Naomi Ryan is working on a sort of kerchief cover for the top of our mannequin, so that the mannequin can have kind of a blank slate for the gown to shine. And Kate over at the work table is putting together panels of the petticoat. So there's a lot of construction happening today in various bits and bobs coming all together. So please, those of you who are watching, type your questions that you have for us in the chat, and we will do our best to answer them. So we'll let folks work. If you want
I've
to.
got the mic. So let's see. We do have some. Lisa's going to have to moderate this chat. It's going to get super busy. Yeah, I think you're right, Jeff. I will moderate. I'm also passing the mic around.
Yes.
So let's see. Waiting for things to come in. While things are coming in, do you want to talk a little bit, Sarah, about how this started and
Sure.
what led to this moment?
Yeah. So I first learned about Buttonwoods Museum and the gown here in 2020. It was lockdown, and I was kind of wondering, you know, in the Abigail Adams study that I've been doing, wondering what there was in museums or in historical societies that had belonged to her. And I discovered that there's this gown here. I'm going to grab the photo of it if I can. Yes, that'd be great. There's this gown that came to the museum in 1944. It was donated by Abigail's sister's descendant, her sister Mary. When she married Richard Cranch, they moved around a couple different places and settled in Haverhill. And so this gown was last on exhibit in, the 80s, I believe. There was an exhibit of First Ladies' fashions. And that was pretty much the last time it had been on display, and it was getting a bit fragile, and it, couldn't really be put on a mannequin and mounted and everything. But the family lore that came to the museum with the gown was that Abigail had sent it to her sister from London in 1785 when she was there on diplomatic work with John. And I haven't found anything in particular to, identify a gown that Abigail sent to her sister, that she wrote a letter saying, this is, coming to you, be aware that this is on its way to you. But a gown like this, a full gown, would not be sent to another person. There's, very little evidence that a gown could just be made in another country and sent to a person and it would definitely fit that person. All clothing at this time is made bespoke to a person's body. So I've been kind of digging in to see kind of what I can find out about it. But in the meantime, I came to visit the gown and the museum in 2022 and spoke with the curator at the time, Jan. And, I was looking at the gown and examining it and kind of trying to figure out what I could learn from it. And she said, yeah, it's getting really fragile. I don't know if we'll be able to display it. I would love to have a replica gown. Do you know anybody who could potentially make a replica gown? I said, well, I could, and I also know a lot of people who could. So that kind of got this in motion and started the whole kind of process of, can we do this program? Can we, get the materials, get the funding that we need in order to make a replica gown for the museum to be able to display? And turns out the answer is yes. So that's kind of brought us to this point. And she's off camera right now, but Barbara Strickland is our amazing grants writer who has really made this project happen. And she's very modest, but she's amazing and wonderful. And we're absolutely so incredibly grateful and would not have been able to do it without her. So, and those of you in the chat, say hi, let us know you're here.
Tell us where you're from.
Yeah, tell us where you're coming in from. We'd love to know what kind of broader audience this is reaching today. So please type in that chat where you are joining from. Thank you. This is an exciting project. Congratulations. We agree. Thank you. Let's see who else we got.
We've got Jeff.
We've got Jeff.
Hello. Hello, Jeff.
You might want to tell them who Jeff is.
Oh, Jeff is Naomi's husband. Very supportive. I should text my husband and tell him, why aren't you on our live?
From Hingham, Massachusetts. All right.
Nice. The Bottoms HQ.
Yeah,
Jeff
that's right.
says, coming in from Alexandria.
So this says, let's see, Pamela Vickers Tuttle
Pamela Vickers Tuttle.
from Hingham, Massachusetts. Lovely. I am going to, let's see, what kind of stitchery needs to be done right now? Is it all kind of in process?
All in process. I mean, we could, let me get the mannequin over here and we can talk about
Yeah, absolutely.
like putting her together.
Okay. As with this project, the mannequin has also been a group effort.
With everything else in this project.
Jeff says, I love your cool scepter mic.
Oh, yes. The skeleton hand mic.
Oh, Pamela says, I follow one of the ladies behind you. I learned about this broadcast and didn't want to miss it. Thank you.
Let me get this one this way there.
Okay.
So you can.
So this mannequin was originally Naomi Ryan's, and the stays that are on it were originally Lisa's. Lisa made these stays how many years ago now?
It was 8 or 9. It was actually my first 18th century project was these stays. I made them out of a kit from Larkin and Smith, and they're fully boned. And I constructed them with full historic methods aside from the boning channels, which I did with a sewing machine from 1965. So I wore these stays probably 500 or 600 hours, maybe 800 hours. They were my first pair and I wore them a lot. And they were starting to wear out, so I put them away because I was going to repair them. And then we realized a month ago that we needed a pair of stays for this project because the mannequin that we had available wasn't going to be able to take penning. And penning into the bodice to construct a garment for this era is really important. And so we were sitting at lunch on our study day, and Sarah had these very ambitious ideas. I'll make some stays. I was like, you're not making stays in 3 weeks, Sarah. And so I was like, you know what? I bet if we really close them up, the stays that I made in like 2017 are gonna work. And here's the really interesting thing. When we first put these stays on this mannequin, we commented to each other how like nice
It looks like a
it
museum
looks like
piece.
a museum piece. And these stays do fit me. And her bust is like roughly a 36-inch bust. I do not have a 36-inch bust. I don't think I've had a 36-inch bust since 7th grade, possibly 6th grade. And with the back all the way closed and the front as closed at the waist as it can get, it does actually fit her. So
Yeah.
that's a really good example of how these kind of styles are extremely adaptable as long as the back length is correct. And we were really lucky that the back length of the last wearer of the Abigail gown was roughly 13 inches long, which is my back length. And so that gave us a starting point to look at total proportions. So even though the mannequin is a really tiny, like size 4, I think, or possibly a 2, depending on your structure, your sizing system, she does fit into my stays. And then we used my arm lengths, my arm bone lengths, and Sarah's arm circumferences, because her around the arm, this measure around her arm is the same as for the last wearer. So that gives us the idea of circumference for the arm muscles. So I drafted the arms, the extra arm.
My mom
Show
says,
them the
love the macabre mic.
Okay, let's show them the extra arm because they can't see
Yes.
the arms. So
Now,
I
Lisa-
drafted the arm.
Lisa's not going to say this,
by
but I am.
corroborating it.
Lisa drafted arms to put on the mannequin and said, here, Sarah, here's the pattern to make the sleeve. Make a right and a left. And I made 2 lefts.
So we have an extra one to share with visitors. It's been nice to have it as a thing to show people, look, this is, the inside of this. Because, if you see a gown like this and it's mounted and there's no arms, it looks kind of sad. And
So she has arms.
This gives it a little more, but conveniently compared to a human, her arms do come off with little buttons. So this morning when we were doing the final fitting of the bodice, we were able to take her arms off, which you can't, that's frowned upon with a human client.
Get this arm out of the way.
So we got to take her arms off. I love your cool scepter, Mike, Lisa. Thank you, Jeff. Okay, follow one of the ladies behind you. I learned. David, Mom, and Bobby here. Magnificent. Love the macabre mic. Yeah. Susan. No, your brother says. Okay, I don't. Okay, Susan. I'm glad the brother likes the mic, I assume. Okay, yeah.
No,
So-
I think my mom is saying that David said no to something I said. That's my brother. So yeah.
Okay. All right.
Sibling
Sibling
conflict
situations,
comes
so-
even across the country. They're
Yeah.
joining from Los Angeles.
Are we over? Okay. Jeff asks, how's the temperature inside? Are you overheating at all in all of those layers?
Jeff knows the questions to
Jeff
ask.
knows the questions people ask us in public.
It is
So-
very
so
nicely.
Let me throw it to Naomi Ryan. Since her infant husband has to find us with this question.
I would say that all of us are pretty comfortable today. We are inside in an air-conditioned space.
It says it's 68 on the thermostat on the wall.
Yes.
So
And the beautiful thing about what we're wearing is all of us have natural fibers on, which are really great at helping to regulate temperature. Unlike our modern synthetics that hold and trap heat against the body, our linen and our wool and our silks are able to really help us get some breathability around our clothing that we're wearing. So I think we're all rather comfortable.
yes, Absolutely. So that is the classic question that anyone who dresses up in historical clothing tends to receive.
If it's hot outside of the gown, it's hot inside the gown.
Hi, Naomi. I'm thrilled to see you live and your fellow
I assume seamstresses.
seamstresses. What an incredible project. I'm sure the public is really enjoying this immensely. Can't wait to see the finished product. Love, Mom.
Teresa Glazer. Teresa Glazer. Oh, that's your mama. Aw. She said seamstresses. Oops. Hearts to Annie's mama. Aw. That's so cute.
Lovely, lovely. It's good to have you on the live stream.
Yes,
Thank you
it's
for
good to have you on the
joining
live
us.
stream. Thanks for doing it.
So the gown in its current iteration, this gown, as it was displayed, trying to get the glare off the screen here. That's not working. So the gown as it was displayed and as it, exists now, it has gone through several iterations and several alterations, several, changes over the years. The fabric, we believe, was woven in the 1730s or thereabouts, just given the motifs and the number of colors and the complexity of the weave. And then at some point in maybe 1760s, 1770s, it was made into a gown in the fashionable style of that time, which we see on the pieces of the gown currently. We see some pleating and we see seaming and we see, evidence of these previous iterations of it. We think it was also then restyled at some point, maybe in the 1780s. And then, as was very, very common in the 1870s around the centennial, got grandma's gown out of the attic, restyled it to wear to celebrate America's 100th birthday. And that's where the gown kind of got frozen in time, but it still shows all of these, all this evidence of these previous styles. So when we were deciding what to do for this particular program, it being the 250th this year and the, 1770s being kind of the...
What? Your mother. Yeah. So cute.
So the 1770s being kind of the,
The emphasis.
the impetus for, all of that revolutionary action, we decided that we would make a reproduction gown for the 1770s. So we're making a pleated back, fitted back gown with a separate petticoat. So it's later gowns you sometimes see. Yeah. So these pleats here, it's a little hard to see, but there's a central seam that runs all the way down the back to the floor, and then it's pleated to fit the back, and the pleats kind of fan really nicely and pleasingly there, and the skirts are pleated into the bodice. So that's the style of gown that we're making for the museum to display.
So the pleats go all the way to the front of the
Excellent
bodice.
question, and Lisa's been answering this one a lot.
How many hours would it have taken to create this dress back then? So this kind of dress from start to finish with the matching petticoat, without any extra trim, I want to be clear about that. It takes about 100 hours, 100 man hours to make. A little bit less if you are taking certain shortcuts or if your fabric is relatively wider, but their fabrics were only so wide because they're still working with looms that humans had to weave with their hands. So you can only get the silk so wide. So you can only get the silk so wide because a person has to throw the shuttle, and also the thread has to survive that. So threads, weaving techniques have all changed, but the main time saver you have for modern production versus older production is that the fabric is a lot wider, can be a lot wider.
Yeah. This fabric, and this is even narrower than I've even heard of a lot of silks being. I've heard of 22, 24-inch looms, and this skirt of this gown has 6 panels of 16-inch wide silk.
Yeah, and they're uncut panels. They still have the selvage, so we're sure that's actually the width that it was.
Yeah, it was pretty cool to discover that the selvages were like in those seams.
Got a great question from Jeff also. How many hours, combined hours, have you all invested thus far? So
Studying the gown.
that hurts. So as far as actual construction, from like scissors first hit silk on Wednesday, we've been working from 10 in the morning to 5 at night for 4 people for 4 days. So 10 to 5 is 7 hours. So 7 times 4 is 28. 28 times 4 is something.
A little more than 100.
No, 52.
28 times 4?
No, you're right. That's wrong.
100, it's 100 plus already.
100 plus. Yeah, we're at the 100-ish mark. Oh, 112.
We're at like we're at like 100.
112. And then
Yeah.
today we have another pair of hands. Although actually today we've gotten to the point where all of the kind of units are finished. So sometimes we have one of us either idling or talking to people or working on some other project because there isn't really enough like readily easily shared work at this point.
Especially because when you get the skirt panels together, now you've got a
It's
massive,
really big piece. Yeah.
big piece of
So
fabric.
I would say we're coming in on like 120, 130 hours. And part of it is though, ironically, because we're a group having to like communicate what happens next, what are we doing next, what's happening. We did have a couple of missteps and had to start some things over.
This is the
We have a
chalkboard
chalkboard to
that
help
we've
us
been
stay organized.
keeping
so
track of
what
our
our focus is for the day. But yeah, we're probably going to be maybe 130 hours total, which isn't bad given the number of people and the relative complexity of this specific gown and the things we've had to do in order to deal with the modern fabric.
Yeah.
as
And we've
far
been
as-
putting, speaking of the modern fabric, we've been putting false seams into the panels of the skirt fabric because the fabric that we got is 44 inches wide. So in order to kind of replicate those, historic
Panels, yeah.
panel widths, we're not cutting this fabric because it does fray quite a bit. But putting in a little false seam to kind of give the idea of what an original width would
So
be.
the other major thing we've done that is different that you don't see in originals is just because of this fabric being a little more fragile on the cut edge, is that we've had to bind some of the pieces, which is a step, but it's not like 6 more hours of steps.
Yeah.
But probably cumulatively, it's 8 hours total more of work that needed to go into the gown than it would have back in the day.
Yeah, fabrics were woven so tightly and finely that you just didn't see that kind of fraying on cut edges. I mean, inside of gowns, when you study, we've had the opportunity, I think all of us have had the opportunity to study extant gowns in some capacity. The guts inside are raw.
They're a mess,
They're
yeah.
not covered up. They don't hide the seams. They don't hide their stitches. It's the idea is speed, and a workshop of this size. I mean, they would be doing gowns in maybe 2 to 3 days.
Yeah, that's pretty normal. You would expect to be
Yeah.
able to get a gown in 2-3 days.
Yeah.
So the other piece, although they were working longer hours. than we have. And they probably didn't keep count of how many times someone pricked themselves.
No,
So
that's me 9 times so far.
The other piece that's really different is that we did, I wouldn't call it a cheat. We gave ourselves help because Sarah and I draped the shapes for the gown on the dummy before we ever came here, which gave us, and I drafted the sleeve, which gave us a head start compared to starting from literally nothing.
Yeah.
So it sort of replicates if you were to send your shapes to a dressmaker to at least base the gown together for you, and then you might finish the stitching and make any adjustments with a local dressmaker.
Yeah.
That
But a
was the
dressmaker
other
would have, I
piece.
mean, for almost all women and almost all men, you'd buy your fabric, you'd take it to the tailor shop
And the
or the
thread,
mantua maker
yeah.
and the thread. You'd take those things to the mantua maker or the tailor and have that measured and placed on your body to figure out, the shapes and the cutting and all of that. And then the stitchers would be putting it all together.
Okay,
with
there's one
the-
more question before we get back to
Yeah,
this.
with the
Also,
material-
your right pen is coming out.
My right pin is coming out.
With the material for this gown at the time come from Europe because it was so fine. That's really a great question.
That's a great question. So in the 1700s, there were a couple of different sort of centers of silk production in Europe. There's Spitalfields outside of London. There's Italy had kind of fallen off by that point, but Tours in France. Lyon in France, and the Netherlands as well. So
They were trying to produce silk in Sweden. They didn't really get that off. their
Yeah.
grounds.
And even there were attempts at putting, people to work growing silk and cultivating silk in the colonies, and it kind of fizzled. But generally, yes, the silk would have been woven in Europe and then imported to the colonies and then the United States. And that was the thing, is that these embargoes started being imposed on European imports. So in the colonies, they moved away from fancy fine silks and instead were focusing on homespun and being able to make your own cloth. You would then still take that to a dressmaker, but the idea was to to avoid and to boycott essentially those imported goods that were being so heavily taxed. So a fancy silk gown that Abigail had, it was becoming unfashionable now to have these, fancy garments. That was sort of like, oh, you must be a loyalist, okay. So for a time, it wasn't as, it wasn't as trendy, it wasn't as fashionable, it wasn't considered the patriotic thing to do to be importing these fancy silks. But yes, generally.
I do think an
Yeah.
important nuance, though, is I think a lot of people will read, for example, out of context, about George Washington wearing a homespun suit for his inauguration, and they'll picture like him in like burlap. Homespun and home production in this era doesn't mean crappy. It doesn't
It's not low
It
quality.
doesn't mean low quality.
Yeah.
Now, if you buy a fabric and it's labeled as homespun style, it will be all slubby and messy and have like kind of some deliberate like sloppiness to it. But because production still hadn't fully moved over into industrialization, if you had the right weaver who had the right tools, like as long as you had the skills and the tools, it didn't matter. People generally worked out of their homes and out of their homesteads and out of small workshops. It wasn't like, what part of what formed the wealth of this region, where there were these giant mills where there were enormous like factory production. So like homespun, you didn't get that distinction between homemade fabric and fabric that was made professionally until the giant water-driven mills and steam-driven mills, which was not the case at the time. So it just had to do with, did you have the person with the right skills, the right materials, and enough time to make your fabric as fine as you wanted it? And some production, some plantations in the United States by then were making a lot of their own use fabric.
Yeah.
And it didn't mean it wasn't just for horse blankets. It was like the things that you wanted, things that were desirable. But we got a great question. David cackled at George Washington in burlap. Yes. That's how I pictured it. So I actually have a question that I think would be good for Naomi Glazer, which is what modern tools, aside from threads and buttons, do you all have at your disposal that they didn't have in the past?
Oh, goodness. Oh. Well, sewing machines for one.
Do you want to stick to for this project?
Yes.
Well,
Well, I mean,
rayon.
we have yes, crayons, and honestly, like having access to like all the different irons and the measuring tools, and like, well, and of course they did have them, but ours are plastic and you could see through them.
The erasable marker.
Oh yeah, and the erasable markers; those have been super, super helpful for all of us, and all that stuff. But it's kind of fun combining all these things, but still doing it by hand is just such a special thing. And so, yeah.
Okay. Well, we got a great silk question.
Ooh.
You explained that 18th century silk frays less than modern silk. 18th century silk was more tightly woven. Is that it? It's amazing that their hand-woven silk can be woven to fray less than modern. It's not even just the weaving, it's the threads. There is literally no way modernly really to produce fabric in the same quality, in the same tightness of weave, in the same strength as in the past. Every element of textile making was done by hand. The silk was unspooled by hand. The linen was processed by hand. All of the wool, all of that was done by hand. And also, they're different, literally different species of sheep, different kinds of, silkworms even. So there we go. So we've got some kind of, as best we can, we're trying to replicate the process of constructing a gown like this, but we have, different materials that we're working with. When it was all done by hand, there's so much more control in the weaving of the threads and in the, in the spinning of the threads, and then even in the weaving as well.
So this is the cotton thread that they conveniently, helpfully used in the 19th century to remodel the gown, at least the last time. And that's under a microscope. You can see the cotton that's been mercerized. Now, I'm also a hand spinner, and while it's true that you can in theory produce by hand silk the way that they had it, it is not commercially available as produced by hand. So here, for example, in contrast, is the silk thread that was used to hem the gown in the first or second or 18th century making. And it's a lot smoother, it's a lot stronger, it's a filament. And this is the cotton that we think was added at the very end, possibly even as a conservation under the underarms, versus the linen that was used for the lining that we think is original. So
yeah, so linen, cotton, wool, silk, all of those materials were produced in a completely different way than they are now. And it really comes down to the spinning as well, and the processing as well as the actual weaving. So when you're working with hand spun fibers to then hand weave, you're getting a completely different outcome. You're getting a completely different product than you are on machine spun fibers than machine woven. So it's, people will say like, well, historical accuracy, it only goes so far. You can only get to the point of pretty good, even using materials that are made from natural fibers, because linen now, completely different process. It's cut short in order to be able to be woven on cotton looms.
yeah, so there are some heroic people who will go and even grow their own flax and ret it and sculpt it and spin it and I guess weave it and make something out of it. And that's like, I use the term heroic just now. I'm not really exaggerating.
It's
that level
labor-intensive
of labor for just the length of cloth, even to make like a tea towel, is something that ironically in modern, in kind of the modern world is honestly just too precious. So fabric has become much, much cheaper and more plentiful because we have machines to make it, but the machines can't actually mimic human labor. But the flip side of that is that then, each of us has, a dozen, 2 dozen gowns and enough fabric to make probably, is my husband listening? 100 more?
We don't need to count
So
how
we don't
many
need to
yards
count
we
how
have.
many yards of fabric we have. But the point is that like the fabric is not the same. So you do have to take some specific changes to how you finish the stuff in order to get, the same outer result, or at least a comparable adult.
That's hilarious.
Comparable result, but it's not, but that's the flip side, is that the labor that required honestly was built on and required enslavement and colonialism.
Yeah.
In order to have enough people whose hands had those skills to do that work, we had to have a lot of people who were doing it for basically nothing, or for fear of punishment.
Yeah.
And
And-
so luckily we generally don't have that anymore. Mostly.
But we don't know, right? I mean, in so many ways, we've moved so far away from knowing where our clothes come from, where they go when we're done with them. I mean, the idea of throwing away a whole garment would have been very foreign to 18th century people. You know, you would wear a garment until it was no longer in fashion, it no longer fit you, or no longer, you know, it became threadbare. But if there was still any of that fabric that could be saved, you might make it into a smaller garment for someone else, or you might make it into a pillow or an upholstery
Or you line a hat with it.
Or you line it, yeah.
So, or it goes in the rag bag. We went to a conference 2 years ago where there were kind of these gown corpses that had been taken partially apart for mending other garments.
Yeah.
And they called them bag gowns. And some of these beautiful, you know, construction stitches we didn't have names for even, were available because someone was thriftily hanging on to that value, knowing sometime it would come in handy, and then for whatever reason they never used it.
Yeah. And so one of the main kind of focus points for this whole exhibit and this whole project is this gown has survived down to posterity because of its connection to a famous name, to Abigail Adams. But we really are kind of interested in and wanting to share what has been lost, whose names we don't know, whose work we're not even aware, you know, of. We see the evidence of their work, but we don't know their names and we don't know, you know, their stories. And that feels like some of it is just, it got lost to time, right? And some of it is, it just wasn't considered as important. But, you know, what gets saved, what gets space in the historical record is a really interesting question. And the enslaved people, the underpaid people, the people who were exploited, the people who were, you know, unremunerated for their work, we have the evidence of their work. We just don't know who they were. And so
I think Katie can take the next question.
Yeah.
So here we go. Aside from your clothing, are you ladies all wearing jewelry and shoes that are true to what would have been available in the period?
Pretty darn close. I think we all have, okay. So you and I have the pearls that are really, really common. And then you and I sort of have the coral necklaces, also super common.
or false coral in some cases.
we do have more. I noticed earlier that we also, not jewelry, but our hats our caps all have some sort of little silk ribbon.
Yep.
It does help to hold them on, but it's also just that little piece of flair that helps complete an outfit.
And silk ribbon might be the only thing that someone who is, you know, in trade, or someone who is an apprentice, or, you know, an enslaved person might have as their only kind of fancy item, but they would want to dress up. They would want to accessorize in a special way.
Yeah, I mean, humans are gonna human. They still wanna, you know, put that little extra piece on.
Naomi has a very special piece of jewelry on.
Oh, yes.
Yes. You have to get it off.
Yeah. I have a very.
There you go.
Thank you.
These are one of my favorites. They're super cool.
So we have a lover's eye that Naomi Ryan painted for me of my eye. I guess I love myself.
That's important. Yes, you should.
But these are super popular. That's, I guess the term lover's eye was kind of like in the 1970s, though, right? Yeah. But these are like super popular to wear little portraits of like someone that you love, or, you know, special whatever.
Well, and you have the hoops in too, and we
Yes.
absolutely, like, hoops have been a classic for forever.
Yes.
So if you can mold it into a ring and put it in your ear, that's like perfect.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
these ones I designed after reading a Runaway ad, which it was talking about an enslaved person who's running away, who had silver hoops with silver drops in the hoops, like
So
silver
specific,
bead drops.
I love that. Yeah.
So I was able to recreate that, which was really, really cool.
That's, yeah. And that's one of the things that is an amazing resource for learning about historical clothing, historical jewelry, historical accessories. Runaway ads, whether it's an enslaved individual, a servant, an indentured, you know, apprentice, anything like that. There we go.
You don't have to look at my feet, but I'll show you my shoes.
People would write into the newspaper and say, you know, so-and-so ran away, had with them and was wearing. Because again, clothing would not just be for
Identifier,
warmth, not just be for, you know, utility. clothing could identify a person. Clothing was unique enough and personalized enough that if someone's running down the street wearing purple breeches and you know, hey, wait a minute, John has purple breeches. Those are John's breeches.
Oh, here's a great question, like one that we've gotten a lot this weekend, which is, I'm fascinated by your collective knowledge. If appropriate, please share how you became expert.
Oh, experts is a heavy word, isn't it?
I think it's a good word. So let's start with Naomi, Ryan, do you want to
Take a moment.
Got your expertise.
Go ahead. Lots of reading and lots of sewing. You learn a lot by doing. And certainly I've taken some classes with different experts, people who are actually experts. And I do a lot of reading broadly in history. I'm a historic preservationist by training, and that's what I do for my day job. And so you just kind of pick up little bits and pieces everywhere.
So after the
And I think, Sarah, you have a lot more of the kind of academic sort of background.
I mean, I wouldn't say I have an academic background in this. I'm a librarian by vocation, and librarians tend to collect information. And I've gone through many, many rabbit holes in my life, but I've been studying and portraying Abigail Adams for about 10 years. Reading her letters, reading books about her, studying the the time in which she lived, all of the various political and personal, events that shaped her life, and being an interpreter, being a historical portrayer of a historical figure. I want to get as close as I can to what how she would appear, how she would stand and move, and the clothing absolutely does that. Making the clothing isn't necessarily getting me closer to Abigail because she probably wouldn't have made her own clothing, but wearing the kinds of garments that she would have worn, I carry myself differently. I move differently. When my hair is up, piled on top of my head, I hit my head on things that I wouldn't normally. And, even in the shoes, you move differently. And that process for me has been fascinating, and has given me, the opportunity to just kind of study deeper in lots of other ways. So the dressmaking, study of historical fashion, that kind of, I was already really interested in that stuff. And so this is kind of just more of an excuse to learn more about it. So
Naomi G has not answered.
Okay. How I got smart at this. Okay. So I'd say that my way of processing and learning has always been hands-on type of things. So being a child that was very into Little House on the Prairie and Little Women, and it was a very slippery slope. But being able to go into museums and interact with docents and interpreters and things like that, that was such a gateway of learning for me. And being able to touch things and really get my hands dirty and being able to be a part of bringing the history alive was it just opened up whole new brain pathways. So whenever I'm teaching now and whenever I'm learning now, if I can get on to touching the thing or seeing it in person or talking with someone who does that thing, that's the easiest way for me to gain more information. But also books. Books are obviously an endless resource, and Library of Congress, any different type of museum that has archives or archaeological finds or something like that, newspapers, those are all super, super important and something that I've definitely utilized in becoming an expert in this field.
I would definitely say I'm still adjusting to the word expert, so we'll start there. But definitely, it's a little bit twofold for me. Growing up, like the rest of us, I was very hands-on. I was out in nature a ton. My mom almost always had horses, and my nana did baskets and quilting. So I have just like a smattering of how the world works in your fingertips from a little bit of everywhere, and just combining all of that is something this hobby has brought me, because if I watched a TV show that was historical, they had the horses, and suddenly I was like immersed. And so putting the clothing on, making it that much more immersive, was just an easy leap. I had looked at going to school for fashion, didn't quite get there. But then, decade later, pandemic type stuff came around, and I fell down the rabbit hole of historic, YouTube tutorials. And so it's been 6 years now that I've been sewing and gotten to meet this amazing community where now I'm getting to give back to them. And that's really probably the most exciting part.
And then I also struggle with the word expert in this situation, especially given that my kerchief is always uneven. I move my arms a lot. So I'm a mess. There, I just ripped it right off of me. There we go. So don't despair. I know a lot of people in this field talk about, oh, I've been sewing since I was little and I loved it always. And like, I was not one of those people. So I have my undergrad degree is in molecular biology. You can probably tell by my lab notes that I just showed everybody. And I have a master's degree in public health and maternal child health. And I never was super crafty. I was, into theater and writing, and I did costuming, but like as a like buying things and putting them together type of thing. I wasn't like a costume or sewer person. I learned to sew in 7th grade under duress with a teacher who I did not like. I made the most hideous cotton poly wrap skirt on the planet. It has never been worn. Talk about creating more textile waste in the universe. To her credit, my grandma, who was crafty, guided me towards that pattern, and she was correct. That was in fact what I could manage. It didn't even have a hem. It had a bound edge. So she was, thank you, Nana Eulela, Grandma Eulela. So that was like, I had kind of not grown up in a situation where that was something that we did. And then basically about 12 years ago, my sister, who is an amazing knitter and knit designer, and Laura had gotten me into spinning because she was knitting and we wanted to do projects together, and I did not want to knit. So I started spinning in about 2000, and I'm now a teacher of spinning, and I spin all the time, and it's really important to me. But then like 12 years ago, Laura started sewing again because she had gotten a secondhand sewing machine as a present. She needed to like repair something, and she was working for the company that publishes the books for Singer. So she started just trying little projects. And then every week I'm getting cute pictures of my sister in these adorable outfits and that you can't buy. And I had a baby, and I was like, I don't have time for this. And then my baby started sleeping through the night. So I went and pulled the 1965 Singer machine out of our basement that had been a wedding present from my husband's grandma, and got some patterns and started sewing. And then for historic sewing, it would have been about 10 years ago. Yeah, 10 years ago. I went to Mount Vernon and I saw someone who looked really cool. And my toddler goes, Mama, you can make that. And I was like, you know what? I can. And so I bought the pattern and kit for these stays. And this was my first 18th century project. And I do always point out, because I can't stop myself, that the eyelets are really overworked, but they've held together over hundreds of hours of wear. And, it's a great piece. And that was a really great start to me. And then basically expertise came from taking lots and lots of classes, practicing a lot.
I've been her practice dummy a couple of times.
Teaching my husband how to help me fit things without think being afraid he's going to give me a tetanus, an infection, and just sort of like, and honestly making relationships and having a community. I would not be the sewer, and especially the historic seamstress that I am, if I didn't have good friends living nearby to consult with and to help me set sleeves.
And good friends willing to come from farther away too.
Yeah. So like, I think the other thing that's nice about this, it is nice to have a big group because we've been able to get through this project in a relatively short amount of time. But then also, I think it's a really important illustration of how historic dressmaking is best done in a community. And that's honestly part of what keeps us involved, keeps us in it, is that it does take a community to learn these techniques. They aren't dead. There is an unbroken history of them centered on women over the last 300 years. But women always did this stuff as a group, or at least in pairs. And there's wonderful images and woodcuts and sketches and descriptions of, my sister came over and helped me fit a gown. Mama's coming down and we're going to sew up this petticoat. We all got together because this person's house caught fire, and we made them everything they would need, in a weekend, so that they could, not be undressed and have comfort and have care. And I think it's important that textile production, historically and now, still has this weight and this importance to humans of being something that you can use to extend care to others. And so that's part of, I think, what we all find appealing about it. It's connecting with the past, it's connecting with human needs for things to go from nothing to something. Nothing's more satisfying than sewing together a garment, and it went from a length of fabric to an actual garment. There's this moment when it goes from being pieces of thing to a thing, and there's a sense of pride and excitement about that.
And I think the other thing that a lot of people ask is, that must be so hard. And the stitches themselves for a gown like this are not actually that complicated. It's fairly simple sewing. The skill and the thing that all of us are,
Fitting.
and the fitting, the cutting, the actual, construction details, that is a skill. And that is something that, was very, very closely guarded by the people who did it in the 17th, 18th, 19th centuries, because they didn't want just any person to just be able to make their own clothes, because that was their, special,
livelihood.
it was a skill. It was a thing that you had to apprentice to learn how to do. But the stitches themselves, we're using running stitch, we're using combination stitch of running stitch and back stitch, prick stitch, whip stitch, felling
Yeah.
stitch. It's pretty simple mechanics. But the fitting and the cutting, that's really where all of us have, been learning that practice over the years. And so
you could fit all of the stitches that are used in this gown and all of the techniques as far as construction on one piece of paper.
Yeah.
So it isn't so like when we went to study the original, I had written down this big list of possible stitches because I just wanted to be sure and have it be easy to just go, okay, here's where we found this, here's where we found that. And we didn't need it. Like, it was really not.
it was pretty simple.
It was almost ridiculously simple. And I think that's sort of what's exciting, is that from a micro standpoint, you have these very simple stitches, but it's the intentionality and the purposefulness that people put into it that creates what's going to be a very beautiful garment that,
Yeah.
well, if we're lucky, this garment will also last, have 170 years of use and another 250 years of interest.
Yeah.
If we're lucky.
That would be amazing.
If the rayon, if the viscose holds together
Yeah.
and the creek don't rise.
Right. So it is 3:00. If there are any final questions, we'll probably be wrapping up on that beautiful note about what this actually means to all of us in terms of, this is never done in a vacuum, this type of crafting, whatever it is, whether it's knitting or, crocheting or sewing or quilting. It is a community-based activity. And that was what was so hard over lockdown, is that we all felt like we were, bereft of community. And so many of us met and connected and became really close friends during lockdown. We made the best of, a really crappy situation by connecting over Zoom and making these connections when we needed it most. So what is everyone's favorite clothing item they've made?
That's great.
Oh, pass around the mic.
Well, I recently made a gown that was a replica or a recreation of a gown from a woman who was thought to be enslaved in, I think, the Netherlands, but her name was Eleanor Suzette. And it's a silk gown, and it was my first silk gown, and it was terrifying to make. It was so expensive, but it was truly probably one of my shining project, and I'm so happy I was able to recreate that. But also honor her legacy in doing so, and learning about her, and it was that's pretty cool.
Oh, you want me to follow that?
Yeah, you get the tough one.
I think the thing I'm most proud of was, or is a pair of linen knits that I made for myself. I don't have them with me, but I patterned them myself and I stitched them with great care, and they've held up for me for several summers now. And it was just really the first time that I said, yeah, this is really something I love to do. Kate?
I'm going to give you 2 seconds of cheesy. I love anything with gathering stitches, so the tiny little aprons, but my favorite thing that I have made so far is my men's shirt for my husband, so I get to have my Mr. Darcy moment.
Yeah.
They've got all the gathering
Please tell me if
stitches.
you're giving away.
Not yet, to be this summer, hopefully, so cross your fingers.
Sarah.
I feel like, a little bit of a traitor at the moment, but my favorite item that I've made is actually not an 18th century item. Well, I guess it's like right on the edge of the 18th century. It's a gown based on a black taffeta gown in the V&A, the Victoria and Albert, with itty bitty, teeny tiny little pin tucks that are kind of gathering in all of the fabric that I believe was originally a much wider gown, a much, more complicated gown that got kind of refashioned for changing styles. And I made the gown as an example of what Abigail might have worn to honor George Washington when he died in 1799. And this gown, I didn't get a chance to study the museum original, but lots and lots of zooming in, way close in on the pictures that are available on the museum's website. And just being able to finally say, I can do this. I can figure out what's going on with this gown to the best, from what I can tell, and replicate those itty bitty, teeny tiny little pleats, 6 sets of, or was it 8? 8 sets of 6 stacked pin tucks. Say that 10 times fast. On the back of the gown. That's my proudest achievement.
Mine's a little sappy. So I just finished this, and this was a project that I gathered materials for about 5 years, and it was a new pair of stays, but that was so I could make a recreation, or I guess inspired gown for a black silk based on a gown style that was important extremely briefly in Sweden in 1780. This specific gown was made around 1780 and worn by multiple generations of brides in a small town in Sweden. And I made it to wear to my 25th wedding anniversary. Yeah. So, because it is honestly the very first historic garment thing where my husband wondered by as I was looking at the book, and he goes, "Oh, King Gustav III designed that." And I was like, "You have never known or cared about anything." Wait, what are you talking about? And he just casually said, "Oh, King Gustav III, blah, 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 blah." And I was like, well, now I gotta make that. So I just finished it last month, and plenty of time. Wedding anniversary is until August 18th. So I Finished ahead of time.
Finished ahead of schedule. The final thing that we wanted to announce is our mannequin officially has a name. She is Pinifred. And thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your excellent questions. And this video is going to stay on the Buttonwoods Museum channel so that you can come back and rewatch if there's anything that you would like to revisit. I don't know exactly how I would answer questions later. If you submit them after it gets archived, I'll do my best to see if any come up. But again, thank you so much for joining us, and we will get back to sewing.
Yep, we still have lots of work to do.
Bye, thank you.
Bye. Yay, we did it.